Okay, good evening, folks. My name is David Lovato. I am with VTA Community Outreach, and I'll be facilitating tonight's virtual open house, where we'll be discussing the I-280 Wolfe Road Interchange Improvement Project. We'll also have more project presenters from HMH, as well as the City of Cupertino, here to answer any questions you may have about this project and kind of give you an update on where we're at. Just a reminder, folks, that this meeting is being recorded so that we can share it on vta.org, as well as the project page later on. And then we can also make this available not only on social media, but we'll be sending a recording of this meeting to all of our project subscribers. Next slide. So just to go over quickly the agenda. Again, my name is David, and we'll be doing the introductions. I'll also discuss how to participate, you as attendees. We're also going to be going over a public engagement background, where we started off, where we obtained a lot of public feedback early in the project fruition, as well as a project overview and the project schedule with Lam Trin, who is the project manager. John Casanati with HMH is going to go over project details, and then I will wrap it up with next steps and how to stay engaged in this project as we move on to different phases, especially when we reach construction phase later down the road. And then we'll move on to questions and answers. As far as questions and answers, we have a host of panelists who can offer their expertise. Jean Gonzalo, who's our capital program manager with VTA. Again, Lam Trin, who's the project manager with VTA on this project. We have Lonnie Lee Ho, who is our senior environmental planner with VTA. David Stillman, who's the transportation manager with the City of Cupertino, and John Casanati, who is the project manager with HMH Engineers. So again, how to participate, as far as our engagement lately, it's been virtual. So we do have virtual meeting etiquettes, and I just want to go over them quickly so we can move on to the presentation. We're going to, a reminder that we're all going to treat participants with kindness, respect, and consideration. We do ask that you type your questions and comments in the Q&A, and you can do that at any time during this presentation. So you do not have to wait for the Q&A session at the end of the brief presentation to type in your Q&As, but we will be responding to them at that point during the meeting. We do ask that all of our presenters, as well as our attendees, mute your audio when you are not speaking. As of right now, all the attendees are on mute. You're going to raise your hand if you'd like to speak during the Q&A and lower your hand after speaking. VTA will not tolerate demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior speech. VTA staff will remove participants who refuse to adhere to that code of conduct. Next slide, please. So how to participate when we reach that portion in this presentation. You'll see at the bottom, if you are logged in on a desktop or on your phone, you'll see a black bar that has icons on the bottom of your screen where you'll be able to raise your hand during the Q&A portion. That lets us know that you have a question and like to auditorily ask or make a comment. And then you'll see the Q&A bubble where you can participate now and type in your questions now that will be addressed later on during the presentation. If you do raise your hand and would like to speak, what I will be doing, or Kathleen Podrasky, who's our VTA Community Outreach Supervisor, will be muting and unmuting you. You'll get a little bubble saying that you have been unmuted, and that is how then you'll speak. And if you forget to mute yourself after you provide your comment or your question, we will happily do that for you. Next slide, please. Those of you who have chosen to dial in for this presentation, just a reminder, you still can participate too. If you want to just dial *9, that will indicate that you've raised your hand, and we'll unmute you and you can provide your question or your comment. All right, so let's talk about public engagement background and where we started off. Again, my name is David. I think I've said that a couple of times. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about public engagement, we're talking about the first phases of when we went out there and we launched back in September 2016, the public engagement portion where we had a project web pages, fact sheets, and then we did a door-to-door project awareness campaign with major stakeholders. Now, when we say major stakeholders, we're talking about those folks who are either living or working within half a mile of what would be considered the construction area, because those would be directly impacted with this project when we reach that construction phase. And then also we had a social media presence where we started gaining that awareness so that people would subscribe for project updates. So when we move forward with this project, you're well aware of those milestones. During 2016 to 2017, what we did is we were in the alternative analysis phase for this project. We were able to host a conceptual exhibits open house in March of 2017, where we had the public come in and talk to our project designers, our project leads, and provide their feedback on the alternative designs. And then what we did is we took the designs and we worked them based on public feedback and also any other city feedback. And we've kind of narrowed down what we would like to share with everyone tonight is our proposed design to move forward with this project. And in 2017, 2020, we worked on the environmental clearance of this phase. And during that time, we were able to participate in the September 9th City of Cupertino Silicon Valley Festival, where we had a lot of folks coming up and seeing these preferred designs and providing their feedback as well. We also were able to participate in the Juniper Sierra Trail Study in February 19th and 20th of 2018. We're again taking public feedback on those designs. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lam Trin, project manager with VTA, who's going to give you a project overview as well as look at the schedule.
Thank you, David. Again, my name is Lam Trin. I'm the VTA project manager for the project. Next slide, please, Catherine. I'm going to quickly go over the existing condition of this project and our current schedule. This project is located at the Wolfe Road Interchange on 280 within the city of Cupertino. The city of Cupertino is the sponsor for the project. VTA is the project delivery lead, managing the project development, including construction for the projects. And Caltrans is the lead agency for environmental, because Caltrans is the owner of the state freeway system. Caltrans will operate and maintain the interchange when it's completed. The city will assume maintenance responsibility for the newly improved Wolfe Road, including the city landscape. We will talk about it later on. Next slide, please. The proposed improvement for the project include but not limited to the following. We will replace the existing structure with a new wider bridge per current standard. We'll construct wider on-ramp and off-ramp to accommodate traffic demand and grow in the area. Wider sidewalk and bike lane will be constructed per current standard. We'll install new lighting and include landscape. And last but not least, we'll construct retaining wall and sidewall as needed. Next slide, please. The purpose of this project is to improve traffic operations and facility for multimodal form of transportations, which include bicycle, pedestrian, and high occupancy vehicle use at the interchange. HOV bypass lane will either be maintained or added to the on-ramp to allow the carpooler and transit vehicle early access to the freeway during the peak hours. Next, please. I understand the photo on this slide small and difficult to see, but I would like to quickly go over the existing condition of the interchange. This interchange was constructed over 40 years ago. It's a substandard and very congested. Along Wolfe Road, it only has 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. As you can see in the bottom photo, the on-ramp and off-ramp do not have enough capacity to accommodate the future growth in this area. Even with the newly improved off-ramp done by Apple, we expect this condition to be worsened in the future. talk about bike lane and sidewalk. As you can see on the top right photo, the existing bike lane and sidewalk are very narrow. It does not meet the current standard. Bike lane and sidewalk have to cross at high speed on ramp, which really discourages the use of bicyclists and pedestrians. The bike and pedestrian facility do not comply with the current Caltrans complete street guideline, nor is comply with the city general plan vision for a walkable and bikeable community. John Cacciari from H Engineering, our design consultant, will go over some of the proposed improvement in detail later on that I just mentioned. Next slide, please. This slide, I would like to quickly go over the current project milestone schedule. As you can see on the second line, this project started in summer 2016, and as required by Caltrans, VTA completed the project initiation document phase in 2017. Thanks to the city contribution, the project was able to continue with the project development into the next phase. We started the project environmental clearance phase in 2017, and with the additional funding from the 2016 Measure B fund, VTA just completed the project environmental phase just a little bit over a month ago in November of 2020. The project is currently in the final design phase, and we expect to be complete in fall of 2022, pending funding. Also pending funding, the construction phase of this project is expected to begin in fall 2022 and completed in summer of 2025. As I mentioned earlier, this project will include landscape. Therefore, as required by Caltrans, the project will include 3 years of planning establishment period following the completion of construction. With that, I will conclude my presentation for tonight, and I hand it back to David and John to go over more detail on some of the improvement that I mentioned. Thank you, David.
All right, and next I'm going to hand it over as far as project details with John Castanati, project manager with HMH. John, go ahead.
Thank you, David. And I'll do a brief overview. Be happy to talk about more details during Q&A. Introduction, I'm John Cacciati. I'm the project manager with HMH. I've with Lom-Trin and the city of Cupertino, we've been working on this project since 2016. So we've got a long history of this project. And I was also personally in attendance at our previous public outreach meetings back in some of those early phases. Kathleen, next slide, please. So first I want to talk about the context. Lom gave a great background about the purpose and the need of the project. So as we get into design, we want to be sure to embrace the context of this project. And I candidly like to talk about, this is a freeway through a downtown environment. When you talk about having the Apple campus immediately to the north of the interchange, the potential Valco development that is immediately south of the interchange, whatever is built there, and then Main Street, and then the heart of the city, that Stevens Creek corridor heading particularly to the west of Wolfe, but that whole interface we have a highway right through a very urban environment. We expect a high number of pedestrians and bicyclists of all ages and abilities to need to traverse the interchange through this area, including the residences to the north in the city of Sunnyvale, heading south to some of these businesses and commercial districts south of 280. I've got the image there of the land use map, that image in the middle on the top. The reason I wanted to bring that to light is we designed the project looking at long-term traffic projections, and those projections are consistent with the city's general plan. And that's important. We've watched some of the some of the changes resolving around Valco and the discussions at City Council, essentially that does not affect our trip projections. We have taken a conservative approach to what the anticipated demand for travel would be through this interchange. And so our approach is consistent with Caltrans guidelines and MTC practices, modeling based on that general planned use. And then we reviewed the current SB 35 models to make sure that our projections are conservative and capture any trips that could be generated by that Valco development. I've also got that picture in the top left, the bikes that are rolling out. As we know, our transportation landscape is changing quickly with micro-mobility, electric scooters, electric bicycles. There's a lot of different users on the roadway these days. And so we're trying to have the foresight to build a facility that really accommodates all ages and abilities, but also all these different types of vehicles that are emerging with micromobility these days. So this is the overall context about how we begin to design the project. And with that, Kathleen, if you could go to the next slide. So this is the proposed project. David Lovato spoke to some alternatives. This was the selected alternative based on a significant effort with Caltrans and previous engagement with stakeholders early in the project. What you'll notice is an interchange configuration known as a partial cloverleaf. This is the same configuration that's out there today. And that's important because we are working to reuse as much of that existing infrastructure as we can. And so particularly the recent improvements that were performed by the Apple campus as part of their offsite improvements for the off-ramps. As you may know, both of the off-ramps were converted to 2-lane off-ramps, and there was some realignment of the off-ramp at the intersection to Wolfe Road. We'll be reusing much of that infrastructure with our proposed improvements and keeping those existing retaining walls. Along Wolfe Road, we will be replacing the structure over Interstate 280. Lom talked about some of the substandard features of the project. The existing structure also has a service life associated with it. When we design the project, we look at the long-term lifespan for the facility and for Wolfe Road and have concluded that it is desirable to replace that structure in its entirety, which gives us a lot more flexibility, not just along Wolfe Road, but also along I-280, where there's planned express lanes in the future. The project will reach from Prune Ridge Avenue to the north and will conform before Valco Parkway to the south. And so the project does not extend into some of the Valco development further south of the project area. Some other adjacent projects that are of note, the city of Cupertino has a separate project, which is the Junipero Serra Channel Trail. That is in the bottom left of this image. Our project will connect adjacent to Perimeter Road to that facility, providing accommodations for bicycles and pedestrians to get from Wolfe Road to that proposed trail that'll run to the east of the project area along the channel. Other improvements, one really important aspect, if you have not picked it up, is we do expect there's a lot of bicycle and pedestrian uses. And so we've got what are proposed as off-street class 4 bikeways, also known as side paths. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But from the roadway perspective, we are reconfiguring the on-ramp. So in its existing configuration, there's a single lane that merges onto the freeway. So if you get on the loop or on the diagonal on-ramp, you're merged onto a single lane. We'll be revising that to have 2 sequential on-ramps, each one with its own merge onto the freeway. So helping to distribute that traffic along the on-ramp so there's not as much congestion, as well as on 280, there won't be as much, there won't be that platooning effect where there's a lot of vehicles kind of entering the main line all at once. So starting to distribute that, that traffic demand along 280. Along Wolfe Road, the existing structure is also only 2 lanes in each direction. We'll be widening that structure to provide a 3rd through lane along Wolfe Road, consistent with the approaches of Wolfe Road from both the north and the south. And then we'll have a dedicated right turn pocket for freeway-bound trips that are looking to take either the northbound or the southbound loop on-ramps. Next slide, please, Kathleen. This is a cross-section of Wolfe Road in its proposed configuration. So again, one of the things of note is the bikeways and the sidewalks are off-street. We do have accommodations for on-street cyclists. So there's a shoulder shown between our through lanes and our right turn lanes. That's candidly known as a bike pocket. But the reason that's important is we will have on-street accommodations for cyclists that choose to remain on street that don't want to be off-street adjacent to the cyclist. So really trying to consider the high-speed cyclists that might be just trying to shoot through the interchange, as well as those families that might not feel comfortable riding on street, have an off-street accommodation for them as well. And next slide, Kathleen. A little bit more about that bike facility. There's some examples of where these have been built elsewhere. We're working through the details, but this gives you a sense. There'll be one-way facilities that would be generally behind a landscape strip and attached to your sidewalk. The images in the bottom left corner also show what would be signalized crossings of your on-ramps. So there'd be either a bicycle, a push button, or a loop detection that when you arrive would automatically initiate a signal. You would get a red signal for your vehicles, and your bicycles and pedestrians could cross. It's very different than the existing configuration where the vehicles yield to pedestrians, but there's no signal at these on-ramps. And these treatments will be rolled out throughout the project area, but these accommodations are generally shown at all of our on-ramps and off-ramps to provide a safe and current standard passage. Next slide, please. Lastly, at the completion of construction, as Lam indicated, will also be landscaping the project area. So there are dense trees that are out there today, many of which will be impacted by construction in the immediate interchange area. The project does have commitments to replace landscaping and trees with the project. So when we walk away, we'll be restoring that area and providing a nice aesthetic amenity, not just on the landscape surfaces, but we're also exploring solutions for any concrete structures or abutments for decorative elements that can be installed along those facilities as well to enhance the aesthetic features of the project area. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, David. Be happy to talk about more details in questions and answers. David, you're still muted, so I'll interrupt you and have you start over.
Sorry about that. So let's talk about next steps and how to stay engaged as we move forward with this project. Next slide, please. It was bound to happen to me once where I forget to unmute. So if you haven't done it already, please visit the project webpage. That's vta.org/Wolfe Road. You see a kind of a shot of it right here, where if you stream down to the bottom right corner, you'll see subscribe for updates if you haven't done that already. I encourage you to subscribe for updates so you're aware as we reach more milestones with this project, as well as most importantly, when we get closer to the construction phase, you do want to be part of that conversation. We will have another virtual meeting or public meeting, depending on where we're at in good times, where we will talk about what that construction phase will look like, the community impacts, road closures, lane closures, all that fun stuff that comes with construction. You do want to be a part of it and hear firsthand. So please visit the webpage, subscribe for updates, and you'll be kept informed. Next slide. And that's it. We're moving on now to the public Q&A. We have a couple of questions in our Q&A, but folks, if you at all have any comments or questions yourself, you can raise your hand. Kathleen and I will go back and forth, and we'll start with actually the first hand raised. Seema, I'm going to unmute you if you wanted to go ahead and accept the unmute and speak.
Hi there. Hey, I just had a quick question. I know you went through kind of quickly on how the bike trail would connect to the Junipero Serra Trail, and I just wanted to see if I could understand that a little bit better, because I think the trail goes both sides of the 280 intersection. It keeps going along 280. Both to the east and the west, and it wasn't quite clear how it would connect on both sides. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah,
I'm going to
John,
go back to a slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Seema. Slide 17 is the best example, and I'm not sure if we're able to zoom in, but I can certainly describe it. Seema, as you know, the Junipero Serra Channel the trail is proposed to run both east and west of the project area. I appreciate your comment, and to be clear, The current phase that's under design is the portion that's east of Wolfe Road, as you may know. And that connection, as the Junipero-Serra Channel approaches Wolfe Road, actually attaches to a walkway that was recently constructed with the Hyatt House improvement. So that is the triangular area in the bottom left corner of this image that you're looking at. The Hyatt House is a recent development that's not shown on this aerial. Our project immediately to the north of Perimeter Road will have a connection from our sidewalk to that newly constructed facility on the Hyatt House's property. Again, David or Kathleen, I'm not sure if we can zoom in there. To your question, Seema, about the west side, that portion is more challenging. And so the city's currently evaluating the alignment of that facility. The feasibility study, as I recall, proposed use of Perimeter Road undercrossing, which we do provide connections to. So as the Junipero-Serra Channel Trail determines how to connect the portion of the trail to Perimeter Road, our project would be able to provide accommodations at that Perimeter Road interface.
I see. Okay.
And next we're going to go with, I believe the name is Galaxy Tab A Jenny, if you wanted to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hi, this is Jennifer Griffin. I think I was at that meeting back in 2017 I remember you all had a very, very nice discussion and pictures of the different alternatives. Frankly, I'm very pleased that a lot of the existing infrastructure footprint of this intersection has been retained. I think it's less confusing for motorists. I've lived in the area for many, many years. I grew up a little bit north of there, and certainly I remember when 280 was put in 1968, which is going pretty far back. One of my concerns, I actually sent one of your, I typed a question in that was about whether there was room on Wolfe to make sure that if vehicles had emergencies or trouble with the car, that there's room for them to pull over. Also to have fire trucks, emergency vehicles access. I'm concerned that we have a lot of attention paid to the bicycles, which is very important, but we need to make sure that emergency vehicles can still reach cars that are stranded. We had a 16-year-old killed on a freeway up near San Francisco a week ago because his car broke down in the middle of traffic on a freeway and he was hit. So we don't want to have things like that happening. We need to make sure that there are emergency vehicle access on Wolfe because believe me, there's been a lot of times where there were issues there over the years. Also, I'm very concerned about the number of trees that are on adjacent around the Hyatt House. We fought to keep those ash trees up along the perimeter. Also, the redwood trees that are going down the length of 280 from Palo Alto down to San Jose. We want to make sure those trees, the redwoods, are not disturbed. So please try to make sure that any trees that don't have to be taken down are retained. Also, I'm hoping that we're not going to just have a clear cut of all the street trees and stuff in there, especially if we're going to cut the trees down 2 years before we do construction. We probably should have maps available at the city website of which trees are going to go down, because at the Hyatt House, we fought to keep those trees up that are around the on-ramp, and the redwoods, they have to be watered. So I'm very, very concerned about that. One of the reasons why this area is as beautiful and landscaped with trees as it is that the public is extremely concerned and protective of the trees there. This looks like a nice design. And we also, Caltrans, if you're listening, we have a big out of control homeless camp at Calvert and 280. I'm hoping somebody can come down there and help it. It's having a lot of problems. Anyway, this looks like a nice plan, and thank you so much for all your care and concern.
Thank you, Jennifer. There's a couple of things there that I'm not sure if we can get to all of them, but as far as space for the emergency vehicles, John or Lam, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. So our geometry is designed to accommodate large vehicles. So in addition to emergency vehicles, fire access, we have full movement for trucks in all directions of the interchange. So all movements shown here are capable of accommodating trucks. We also have extra wide lanes in anticipation of large tech shuttles that are expected to use the interchange. So we've actually gone slightly above the minimum standard for lane width to accommodate some of those oversized vehicles. As far as the outside shoulders, we do provide shoulders for joint use of bicycles and emergency vehicles. So there are shoulders that are consistent with the approaches on Wolfe Road that'll be continued through the project interchange.
Thank you.
And David, to point on 280, there are existing standard shoulders that will remain. So we are not modifying the shoulder widths on the highway.
Thank you, John.
I also want to add that, we will incorporate the preemptive system for most of our intersections, so that will accommodate the emergency vehicle when they have to get through this area. So that is something that this project will incorporate into our design. Thank you, David.
Thank you. The discussion of trees, if we're providing information a little bit more down the line, or if we've identified the types of trees that are being removed or where they're at. I think there was a question of some type of map or a locator that we can provide.
Yeah, through the final design process, we're refining the limits of grading. So we can work with the city of Cupertino for an appropriate way to convey that information to the public.
Great, thank you. All right, and we've got quite a few questions that I wanted to do, and just want to make sure, Kathleen, what I'll do is I'll go ahead. Yeah, all right.
Do you want me to take the written ones?
Yes, and then okay. And I'll monitor the hands. Thanks.
You bet. Okay, this is a comment from Jim Stallman. Please ask Apple if they will contribute funding for the Cupertino Trail projects which connect to the Wolfe 280 interchange project. These trails directly connect Infinite Loop with Space Park. Offsetting funds will free up other bike ped BTA Measure B money already funding the trails, so it can be used instead to fund 2 community of concern complete street projects currently unfunded in the other end of the county, thus mitigating or reversing disadvantaged community equity, environmental justice effects. I don't know if that's a city.
David, yeah, I can address that, Kathleen. Okay. Yeah, so Apple has contributed money to the Junipero-Serra Trail project to the tune of $1.8 million. They've donated to the city to help us design and build all 3 reaches of that trail. So, so they have made a contribution towards that, and the city has also received Measure B funding for the Junipero-Serra Trail of about $6.2 million as well.
Oh, good. I thought I accidentally deleted everybody's. So sorry. The good thing is Zoom records all this for us. From Reed Moltz, Law mentioned the Cupertino General Plan, which also has a goal of providing citywide access to recycled water. It seems like a missed opportunity not to bring it from Homestead across the freeway here. Why isn't the extension of recycled water a part of this plan? Not really sure who to direct that to. Maybe that sounds like potentially, David, would that be you, or potentially Lonnie? I don't want to put anyone on the spot that shouldn't be. I've not had a water question before on one of our highway projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid question, and that's something that the city can discuss with Caltrans VTA and with HMH as we move forward in the design of the project. Certainly, if there's an opportunity to bring the recycled water line across the freeway, this would be a good chance to take advantage of that. So we'd certainly be willing to look into that further.
Okay. And the next one from Steve Roth, the project, let me make sure I have the whole question here. Just 1 second, please. Okay. This project plan appears to retain the highly problematic pedestrian crossing over the on-ramp from southbound Wolfe to southbound 280. That crosswalk is not visible to drivers until they're right on top of it, and near misses of pedestrians happen there frequently. Please reconsider this. John, I think maybe that's a good one for you.
Yeah, and to Steve's credit, 2 minutes later, he said, never mind, question was addressed.
I see it now, yep. All I had to do is scroll down.
But yeah, just to touch on that, we've paid careful attention to the vertical profile of those crosswalks. So that crosswalk will be on the same plane as the approach geometry. So you'll be able to see the paint. And then, of course, we'll have signals there, which are going to be very obvious and familiar to drivers.
Yeah, I think this one, John, is going to be for you. The next one for you, too. I understand that you considered a diverging diamond interchange. Could you explain the reasons for rejecting this, please?
Yeah, thank you. I would say the most significant reason that we rejected it is, unlike the current configuration, as I mentioned, it has 2 on-ramps. And so there is an on-ramp of the diagonal that takes, for example, in the northbound 280 direction, the top of your screen, you'll see that there's a loop on-ramp and a diagonal on-ramp. And so essentially it spreads the load or the demand from Wolfe Road across 2 separate on-ramps. Each of those on-ramps would have ramp metering that's installed. So those red lights that allow you to access the main line. And so what that does is during the peak hour, when those metering lights are active, that queuing on both of the on-ramps starts to queue back and could potentially reach Wolfe Road. Well, one of the most significant flaws of the diverging diamond concept was that it did not allow us to provide 2 on-ramps. It was only a single on-ramp in each direction. So the demand on each of those on-ramps was twice as high, and that queuing would spill back into Wolfe Road, causing congestion along Wolfe Road for people that were not freeway bound because of the queuing from that on-ramp meter.
Okay. And the next one was from Jenny, which I believe we've answered her questions. We did that live already. And that was about making sure we had room to pull over for cars with mechanical issues. And the next one, where are the metering lights on each on-ramp?
Yeah, I'll field that as well. You can see probably the best example of it is the northbound loop on-ramp, the on-ramp that's at the bottom of your screen here. You'll see a white bar across that loop. That is where your metering lights are. Actually, as I mentioned, we've got a lot of storage necessary on these on-ramps. So we've sought to push those metering lights as far downstream of the on-ramps as possible, keep all of that traffic that's waiting to get on the freeway on the on-ramps, not congesting Wolfe Road. So in the both the northbound and southbound direction, those diagonal on-ramps are actually off the paper. The project does extend along 280 beyond this image, but this image really is focusing along the Wolfe Road corridor.
Okay, we're going to do 2 more and then we're going to switch back. So for the folks that are calling in or online. So this next one, will the interchange remain open during construction? And will through traffic be diverted to Tantau or North Blaney? I'm not sure. Are we that far? Or are we far enough ahead to answer that already? And design?
Yeah, I'll take that as well, but I'm going to throw one to Lom soon just to put him on the spot. Yeah, so we have a preliminary staging concept, and it's difficult to tell at this scale, but actually our structure is offset from the existing structure so that we can build half of the new bridge without closing the existing bridge. So in a big picture, yes, Wolfe Road will remain open. We are exploring temporary closures of some on-ramps and potentially diverting traffic to the existing ramp. So at this point, we're seeing full access at the interchange with the exception of extended weekend closures or very minor impacts. But certainly through the life of construction, we expect to maintain traffic along Wolfe Road.
Thank you. All right, one more. Please call out the major land uses and trails on the layout slide so we can follow the discussion. The trails have to be laid out in more detail and its connection to the project. So maybe more displays. It's hard to do this on Zoom.
Yeah, I don't have control of a cursor or anything, but we certainly have exhibits and have coordinated with the city of Cupertino for the Junipero Serra Channel Trail to ensure that the projects are coordinated.
Okay, David, do you want to?
Yep. Okay, so we're going to go to hands raised. Every time I see the hands raised, I virtually see someone sitting there holding there. So I want to make sure we give them a chance. Tony, I'm going to unmute you. If you go ahead and accept that unmute and go ahead and ask your question or provide a comment.
Yes, thank you very much for paying so much attention to the bike paths. And I heard you say that there's separate bike paths for families, kids who like to be close to the sidewalk. And then for people who want to go more quickly, they can go on a marked bike path on the road. Does that marked bike path also cross the on-ramps and off-ramps?
Yeah, perhaps David, if you could flip to, or Kathleen, sorry, if you could flip two more slides.
Forward or back?
Forward, sorry.
That's okay.
There we go. So that bottom middle image is probably the best way to demonstrate it. So that green line that's on there that really jumps off the page would be our correct. Oh, thank you. You've got a cursor. Thank you. Would be our off-street facility. So this would be shielded by landscaping as space permits, and would be that all ages and abilities facility. There's no reason a high-speed cyclist could not use it, but it would have signalized crossings of these on-ramps. In that same image, Kathleen, there's a shoulder along Wolfe Road. It's in between your right turn lane and the through movement. Can you hover your cursor over that?
Yeah, hold on. I'm moving some things. There's a lot of other controls on my screen here too. Okay, so I'm sorry, where do I go?
Keep going down on your image. And there's two solid white lines. A little bit farther, a little bit farther. There you go.
Right here.
Keep going up between your right turn lane, right there. So that is what's known as a bike slot. So that would be what is conventionally considered a Class 2 bike lane. And we're working with Caltrans about whether or not that would be fully striped and delineated as a bike lane. But essentially, it's a shoulder that meets bikeway standards, including how it crosses right turning lanes, very similar to a lot of the Class 2 bike lanes that are out in the community today. And so when I say that there's alternate accommodations for high-speed cyclists, sometimes some of the downside or the drawbacks of an off-street facility is that it can create a longer duration to cross the interchange. And so we've preserved space on street for the users that choose to remain on street. It would be a more stressful environment. You're going to be closer to vehicles, but the accommodations are still there and meet minimum standard.
Thank you. And Larry Dean, go ahead and unmute yourself.
There we go. Good evening, David and John. Good to see you again. It's been a long time. One quick question is, what's the lifespan of this bridge? Is it going to be about like a 75-year bridge? And secondly, in each direction, there's 4 points of auto pedestrian or auto bicycle conflict, which is a high level of conflict. And I would think that that is going to dissuade people from trying to ride their bike over that intersection or walk as far as that goes. Could you refresh our collective memories on what other alternatives you have considered, and maybe the short answer why they aren't on the list? These alternatives that would remove the auto pedestrian or auto cyclist conflicts. Thank you.
Well, I'll let you answer the structures question to throw you on the spot here.
Yes, thank you. And the newly constructed structure over 280 not only accommodate the future improvement on I-280, but yes, the lifespan of the structure we expect to be about 75 years. And for the second question, John, I don't know if we have the other alternative that been evaluated and eliminated for further study, but hopefully you can Talk a little bit more why the DDI was eliminated for further considerations.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think Larry's comment is about the DDI, but more about potentially grade-separated facility, looking to completely eliminate those conflicts. So, Larry, early on in the project, we did go through an alternative evaluation process. One of the real challenges of this project is it's got a very, very small footprint for right-of-way, and so unlike other projects where you can kind of break a bike and pedestrian facility away from Wolfe Road and have it cross over the highway, thinking like the Don Burnett Bridge, of course, or there's some other recent projects that I know you're very familiar with that have a fully grade separated Class 1 facility. We just don't have the space here. The approaches from Wolfe Road are very tight. Both of the diagonal quadrants are very narrow. So the existing right-of-way did not provide a lot of opportunity for kind of a sweeping alternate crossing. And so without that alternate space, that crossing now would have to stay along Wolfe Road and then still cross grade separated over these ramps. And to do that, now you're talking about actually a third level crossover. So you've got your highway down at existing grade, Wolfe Road crosses over the top of it. Well, now to have a grade separation over Wolfe Road, you're up at that third level, which really starts to offset the benefits of a grade separation because now your bicyclists have to climb up this big hill to cross the interchange. So we looked at that early on when we were trying to determine the appropriate bicycle facility. We met with the BPAC group and had ultimately at that time concluded that an off-street facility like shown here was the best answer for the project area.
And thank you, John. We're going to do one last hand and then go back to our Q&A. Lisa, go ahead and unmute yourself and provide a question or comment.
I do. It's actually in relation to another comment previously. The comment or question about extending recycled water, that was posed by Reed Molds, who was not identified as the project manager for Valco. And I'm a little concerned that the city's response was that they would look into that. I know it may not be completely related to this discussion, but I want to make sure it's on record that I would not be happy if the city was paying millions of dollars to get recycled water to Valco. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. On the typed in Q&A, Ari Feinsmith, I don't know if this is the slide you were referring to because we had moved on when you wrote in your question, but it said on the bottom right side of this picture, I see the bike lane is in between the traffic lanes instead of off on the side. This current setup makes cyclists feel less safe. Is it possible to move the lane against the side of Wolfe Road? John.
Kathleen, I'll field that. And I know what Ari's talking about. If you go back 2 slides, he very astutely noticed our project conform. So if you could flip back 2 slides, maybe one more, that overview exhibit, that big one. So I think what Ari's referring to is in the bottom right corner in our approach to the Apple campus, you'll see that our Class 4 off-street facility goes back into an on-street configuration. So the reason for this and that area altogether is, as many are familiar, immediately to the north of Prune Ridge, there are 3 through lanes on Wolfe Road, then a bicycle slot, and then a double right onto the Apple campus. So when we were looking about how to conform, we know the existing facilities on Wolfe are Class 2 or on-street bike lanes. We need to pick a point about where we take this Class 4 facility at the interchange and conform back to the existing conditions, because there's not a current an immediate plan to upgrade the Wolfe Road bike lanes prior to the construction of this project. So we had to pick a point to conform. As we looked at the intersection of Prune Ridge and the double right into the Apple campus, there was not a great opportunity of where to bring those bicyclists back to an on-street condition. And so we worked with both the city and VTA to determine the most appropriate place where we had the most space to merge these vehicles, to merge these bikeways and kind of assign people into the appropriate location for safe passage. And that's how we determined this location. And it does include at the Prune Ridge Avenue location, a crossing of that single right turn pocket that's approaching Prune Ridge Avenue. So that facility in the current design does exist, as you've noted.
Thank you, John. I have no more open questions over here.
We just have one last hand. Tony, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for the great answers, John. I just want to latch on to what your comments on the, I guess, floating bike lane just coming into Prune Ridge Avenue on the south side. I'm sorry, on the east side. You know, I'm a reasonably fast cyclist, but when there is very little traffic, when there's sort of moderate traffic flow, I find these floating bike lanes in the middle of 4 lanes of traffic to be quite challenging. Now, I have 2 rear-view mirrors, so I feel probably more comfortable than kids who would use that bike lane. But I think it would be wise to maybe look at other alternatives, especially for the people who feel less comfortable cycling.
Thank you, Tony. David Stillman, regarding the all ages and abilities, I do believe that the city permits use of sidewalks for really young children. I don't know what that age threshold is.
Yeah, that's correct, John. We do allow sidewalk use for ages 12 and under.
Okay. And Tony, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It's that balance. I think our existing infrastructure, it has room for improvement on that all ages and abilities. And so our project is looking for the best place to conform and transfer those users. And so in the area shown was an opportunity to, again, safely facilitate that transition. But that's certainly something we can continue to consider as we move forward in design.
Kathleen, I think we have one.
We did, and I have to laugh because they stuck in an acronym and I don't know what it means, but I'm going to go for it here. Says, I believe Larry did bring out an important point on pedestrian bike auto conflict at 4 corners of this layout. Freestanding pedestrian overcrossing at third level, and I'm assuming POC is pedestrian overcrossing. That's what it is on. Okay, thank you, because that's what it is on my other project. At third level is pretty common for big projects such as this. There are plenty of examples for such projects in the Bay Area. Is RW right-of-way? I'm assuming maybe is needed. Okay. The project has to acquire it to make this project to be truly pedestrian bike friendly. Right now, it is not. US 101 Holly Interchange is a perfect example with exclusive pedestrian overcrossing in addition to sidewalks and bike lanes across, along the bridge. On my projects, we say ROW for right-of-way, not RW.
Yeah, I mean, the statement there is about balancing the right-of-way. Obviously, in the city of Cupertino, right-of-way is not cheap. There is, dense development in all quadrants. And so the project has worked hard to minimize that. And additionally, as I mentioned, so the vertical clearance from the bridge to Wolfe Road is approximately 24 feet, I believe it is. And so to have a crossing that crosses these ramps, you're going to have an elevation difference of in the order of 30 to 32 feet based on all the geometry, depending on where we align it. So that's that hurdle, that vertical obstruction that we're talking about to climb a 32-foot tall hill as opposed to a 20-foot tall hill. That's that delta. But I do think the attention to the right-of-way is important. We work hard to minimize our impacts to the adjacent neighborhood and to stay within the project footprint as best we can. So it's one person's perspective. We can continue to work with the city and the city's BPAC if they think it's appropriate. But again, as I mentioned early on, back in the early onset of the project, when we met with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission, the Class 4 off-street facilities was determined to be that the best use of the space.
All right. Well, I see no other hands or type questions, but I just do want to remind folks to subscribe for project updates as we move forward in this project. We want to keep everybody updated. Obviously, we're going to have another either community meeting or virtual meeting, whatever the situation allows us, when we get closer to the construction phase. So if questions are still needed, or if you have comments, you can still visit the project webpage and provide those questions and comments, and we'll forward those to our project team. I do see one last hand. I want to make sure that's not ignored because we haven't closed out yet. So Galaxy Tab, if you want to go ahead and just provide that one last comment.
Oh, hi. Yes, my secret name, Jenna. This is Jennifer. I just wanted to throw in there. I was looking at the maps again, and we have that Irvine Properties project with the apartments that are right on the corner. Oh my God, I forgot the name of the apartments, but they have permission to do infill apartments, take down this. I think they have a 10-year entitlement, but they haven't done anything yet. This is at the would be north east side of the intersection. The what do they call it? It's like that those islands in New England in the coast. Anyway, that apartment, pardon?
The Hamptons.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, you remember Steve Jobs wanted to buy that, but Irvine wouldn't sell it to him when he was buying the rest of the land. Have you guys remembered that they are, I know that's a really dumb question, but were they requiring any changes on their frontage of 280 in their apartment? They were going to be building a lot more apartments in there. You all have taken that into consideration, that if they do eventually move on building that, I was at their meetings and they had some treatments of the front of their property. Is anything, are they affected, or are you guys affected by what they were going to be doing on that property if they ever do anything? Thank you very much.
I'm going to defer that question to either Alam or John. This probably sounds like a conversation that happened at our initial public engagement.
Yeah, and
go ahead, John.
I was going to say I might need to engage David Stillman, but we are aware of the Hamptons development that is proposed there. To our knowledge, there's no improvements to Caltrans right-of-way. So the Hamptons does have on-site improvements and some minor off-site improvements, but not that would affect the project footprint as we're describing here. There are some frontage improvements to Wolfe Road along the Hamptons, but I believe off the top of my head, their primary ingress-egress is off of Prune Ridge. So a lot of the work that we're talking about here is adjacent to, but not affected by the Hamptons. And we have reviewed their project for consistency if and when they go forward.
Thank you, John. And I'd just like to add that since this project recently completed our environmental phase, so we are ready to start engaging all those private property owners in more detail of what our proposed improvement may or may not impact their parcel or facility. So I just want to add to that. So David, you want to add on where the Hampton Inn development process is at this point? Or John already covered that?
Yeah, no, that was our Jennifer had correctly described that in her comment. You know, the Hamptons development, they do have their entitlements that they received several years ago to improve their property. I have not heard if they are moving forward with those anytime soon or not, but they have received their entitlements. I don't know what additional offsite work they were going to be doing as part of that. I'd have to look into that. But as John Cecchiotti had mentioned, that would not be affecting the work that's being proposed as part of the current project.
Thank you, David. And before we close out, I did want to mention, though, that sometimes it's much easier for communities who have very specific questions about their very specific impacts as we get closer to this might have. VTA Community Outreach wants to just remind you that we are available if you have community meetings, whether they're virtual. Obviously, in person is not an option, but if you have community or neighborhood association meetings and have very specific questions, we're always available to guest appear, pop in, ask those questions. I know John would have loved to be able to zoom in on some of these images much closer to community, and we'll gladly give John those functions later on down the road. I just want to remind you of that before we close out. And with that, I want to thank all of our attendees. I want to thank our presenters. Kathleen, thank you so much for your help tonight. Our panelists who are offering their expertise. Everyone have a healthy and good night, and thank you very much for participating.
Thank you, everyone. Hey, David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, John and David.